Hi, I'm Cherish, and this is Adventures of a Boss Babe podcast. This is episode 4, and today we're going to be talking about the mistakes that leaders make when they feel lonely.
Hey y'all, welcome to Adventures of a Boss Babe. I'm Cherish, mom, entrepreneur, and the woman behind a whole lot of dreams in motion. After more than 20 years in the early childhood field and building businesses from scratch, I've learned that success isn't a straight line. It's an adventure.
Loneliness in leadership. It could mature you or it could also harden you. That's what we'll be talking about in episode 4 of Adventures of a Boss Babe, how leadership shows up in your behaviors and decision making. When leaders start to feel lonely in their position, I see them, and by them I also see myself, in the past do these few things. So one of the things I see leaders do when they are lonely in leadership is try to take on all of the workload. That is the quickest way to lead to burnout, trying to do everything yourself. Because you don't want to ask for support. You feel like I am the leader, I'm supposed to know everything, I'm supposed to do everything. And that is not the answer. Leadership is about balance, so delegating is helpful. That will get you through and to help keep you from burnout. Another thing that I see is pulling back. For example, when I was first starting out in my education career, I worked at a child care center and I worked my way up from assistant, lead teacher, assistant director, and then I became the director. And there is a certain point where you go from coworker and now you are the boss and you are expected, again, like I said, to know everything and do everything. One of the things that I always tell my team is that I do not have all the answers. And if I don't have the answers, we're gonna figure them out. But if you take that on early on in your career, that you are the person that knows everything and has all the answers, people are going to expect that from you. And that will, further that burnout. So just, it's okay to let them know I don't always have the answers. And that's what your team is supposed to help with. That's what you use your team for, to help you come up with the answers that you don't know. And then that helps that buy-in, that it's not me up here and them down there. You guys are really working together. So when we are talking about how loneliness shows up in decision making, there are 4 things that stand out to me and 4 things that I have seen over my career and my experience working with directors. 1, micromanaging. Again, we talked about having to do everything yourself, but this is even when you delegate something to somebody else, you are standing over their shoulder, watching, making sure they do it the correct way, instead of setting the system or coming up with a policy and procedure, helping them to understand that and learn that, make it their own, and then let them blossom and go ahead with it. So that's one way that loneliness shows up in leadership in decision making, is micromanaging. The other way that loneliness shows up in leadership is decision fatigue. So with decision fatigue, I talked about having all the answers, and when people come to you, you feel as though you have to have all the answers. Instead of just saying, hey, I don't have all the answers, let's figure it out. If you don't kind of move with that kind of mindset, then you are the one they are always coming to for everything. So if you think about it, like maybe in a house, if you are in a 2-family household, if the kids are always coming to one parent and they have 2 parents there, that can put a lot of strain on one parent, therefore having them to be fatigued of all the decision making. That could be the same thing in the workplace. If your teachers can only get an answer from you, then you are working harder. And again, people talk about burnout. These are the ways you can transition into that space of burnout if you are the one that they have to go to for everything. In those situations, you got to kind of sit back and think, do we have policies that only I know, that only live in my head? They're not on paper. They're not in a book. They're not in a manual where someone else can find them. The third way I see decision making altered by loneliness in the admin space is when it is pertaining to trust breakdowns. If you are constantly micromanaging your team, they start to feel that is because you don't trust them. And so if you don't trust them, if they're not doing it the way you want them to do, they never make it their own. They never have that true buy-in. And so it breaks down trust with the team if you are always micromanaging because you feel like you have to do it yourself, because you don't know how to kind of delegate and share that experience with them. So the fourth way that I notice loneliness in admin is when it comes to I can do it by myself mentality. My center is open from 6 in the morning to 11:30 at night. There's no way, and I'm speaking as someone who has done it, worked open at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I've had to close at 11:30 at night because I didn't have the staff. You do what you need to do, but that's nothing that you can maintain ongoing. So the I can do it by myself mentality is not something that you maintain long term. You use that strategy for something that you need to maintain for short periods of time, like maintaining ratios. But if you see that you have a staff that is always calling off and you're always opening and closing, then that's an issue and you need to figure out another solution for that. And so that's not something that you can maintain long term, is just doing it yourself. You have a team, so you have to use it. Now, even if you have a program and you're in home and you are working alone, there are things that you could do to help delegate tasks out so that you don't have to do everything on your own. And so those are some of the conversations that we can have in the chat below if you are so inclined to talk about that and brainstorm that with other people. So some of the things that has actually helped me to stay grounded when I started to feel that loneliness creep in the leadership space is, for one, is boundaries. When I first opened my program, I knew what a boundary was, but I don't feel that I was practicing them in actual theory. But over time, being open and spreading myself thin, again, like I said, being there from 6 o'clock in the morning to 11:30 all the time was not something that was sustainable. And so that was a boundary that I had to set. Okay, if this staff member can't be here at this time, maybe they're not a good fit for the team anymore and I need to hire somebody else, because I can't keep going from 6 o'clock in the morning to 11:30 at night. I don't care who you are, even though you are the boss, you're the admin, you might even be the owner. That is not something that's sustainable. So I talked about loneliness in leadership and not maybe having somebody right there that is on your level. So if you're a director of a small program, there may only be one director, no assistant director, no other admin. But you still have to have some trusted source, somebody to talk to, somebody to run ideas by. It's easier if that someone is in the same field as you or has experience in the same space as you, because then that flow kind of happens a little naturally. If you don't have somebody that's in the same space, it doesn't matter. You still have somebody that you can talk to outside of the program. Again, to just know that you have somebody to have a conversation with. They don't have to know all the ins and outs, all the confidentiality stuff, but just somebody to say, hey, this is going on. How do you think I might be able to handle this? Or have you ever experienced this and how have you handled this? You need somebody, a mentor, a friend, a buddy. It just shouldn't be somebody that you have to supervise, because then that can get tricky. So another thing that helped me to stay grounded was systems versus willpower. And I'll give you an example of that. When it comes to the early childhood field, I think that we feel that we have to be nice all the time, whatever that means. And so if you are doing something that people deem as not being nice, that might alter your decision making. So for example, say you're a director and you have one of your staff member, they are going through an issue, they're having a problem. And they come to you and they're like, oh, I'm having this issue, I'm having this problem. You can listen to that problem. You can, if you feel inclined, give them advice. But what it really breaks down to is systems versus willpower. Yeah, you might have a soft spot in your heart and you might want to help them, give them advice. But when it comes down to actual systems, you have to, again, make the decisions that are important and that affect everybody. So if they're coming to you with this sob story about why they are always late or why they can't perform their job, it then becomes, is this something that I can help you with and still maintain the quality of the program? Or is this something that I can't help you with and we might need to find somebody else to maintain that quality of the program? It's not always a comfortable space to be in, but if you have the systems in place to say, we're going to do A, B, and C, and this is how we're going to do it, and that's not happening because of, your heart space and you feel so inclined to help the staff, in a way that's going against your systems and your program quality, those are some of those lonely decisions that I'm talking about. You might be like, oh, well, I feel bad, I want to help her out. But again, are we holding up the quality and the systems that we're supposed to for our program? And the last thing I would say helped me as a leader is being reflective and really sitting back at the end of the day or the end of the week, whenever you sit down and have a second for yourself, and asking yourself tough questions. Am I making decisions that are based on just one person, whether it's yourself or another staff, or am I making decisions based on the greater good of the whole program? And so being reflective is something that really helped me to stay grounded and to really get out of a mindset of feeling that I'm lonely, so I need to make certain decisions. And then that kind of changed my mindset into, like I said, being reflective and making sure that this is coming from a space of decision making for the greater good and not just, one-sided. When leadership feels heavy to you, do you tend to pull back or do you tend to reach out to others for help? Let's have that conversation down in the comments, and we'll see you on the next episode of Adventures of a Boss Bae.
Thanks for tuning in to Adventures of a Boss Bae. Keep growing, keep going, and I'll see you in the next episode. If today's episode spoke to you, make sure you subscribe, leave a review, share it with another boss bae who needs a little inspiration. And don't forget to follow me on YouTube at Adventures of a Boss Bae for more behind the scenes and real life moments.